The United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs reports daily updates on the casualty figures in Gaza, complete with charts. But all is not well, because OSHA was getting the numbers from the Hamas-controlled Gaza Health Ministry, and so we predictably see some funny business going on. Salo Eisenberg has taken a look at the reported casualty figures coming from Gaza. On October 18, 2023, OSHA reported 3,478 fatalities total in Gaza, with 853 of that total being children. But then on October 19th, the next day, the total of all fatalities went up to 3,785, an increase of 307 from the day before. However, that total was supposed to include 1,524 children killed, or a difference of 671, which is greater than the increase in all fatalities reported.
Does not compute, does not compute, does not compute.
Then on October 25th, OSHA reported 6,547 fatalities, with 2,704 being children killed and 1,292 women killed. The next day, on October 26th, 481 additional casualties were reported, bringing the total number of fatalities to 7,028, with 209 children killed and 417 being women, or an increase of 626, which is more than the increase in the total number of casualties, and no men are reported killed. By October 29th, the casualty total had climbed from 7,703 to 8,005, with an increase of 199 more women killed and 129 more children killed than the previous report. But 8,005 is an increase of 302 deaths from the previous figure of 7,703. However, the total number of women and children killed up to that point was 328, which is an increase of 26 more deaths than the increase of the reported total.
That doesn't compute.
On October 30th, the casualties stood at 8,309. Then, the next day, the 31st, the total fatalities went up to 8,525. New fatalities of women and children increased from 2,062 women killed to 2,187, and 3,457 children killed went to 3,542 children killed, or an increase of 125 women killed and 85 children killed, for a combined total of 210 women and children killed. But the combined total of fatalities increased by 216, which means only 6 men were killed? What is going on here? Remember, these are Hamas's numbers as reported by the UN. On November 7th, Hamas reported 10,328 total fatalities, an increase of 306 from the previous day's total of 10,022. New fatalities of women and children went up by 302 reported deaths. Only 4 men were killed?
It was a bug, Dave.
WHO says the figures from the Gaza Health Ministry, Hamas's health ministry, are reliable, that they even passed international scrutiny in previous wars. In fact, if you look up the numbers, in the wars in 2014 and 2021, Israel's and Hamas's casualty numbers were almost identical.
Well, be that as it may, this time is different, and the accuracy of statistics in former conflicts should not be overstated. Previous rounds of fighting also saw significant discrepancies between Palestinian, UN, and Israeli figures on militants versus civilians killed. Furthermore, whereas in the past, groups like OSHA have been able to independently verify the fatality numbers, they're unable to do that in the current conflict. Thus, for the first time, international organizations and NGOs cannot verify the death count in real time and have not attempted to distinguish between civilian and combatant fatalities. This contributes to a skewed perception in which the UN relays Hamas claims, giving them an air of credibility and allowing major distortions, like the undercount of adult male deaths, to go unchallenged. Only recently has the UN included a disclaimer on their website saying they are unable to verify the Hamas fatality figures.
The UN says these numbers coming from the Hamas Health Ministry are reliable. There's no reason to doubt them because several times this health ministry during this war has published long lists of names where you have the ID number, their names. Detailed lists have been published documenting who has been killed inside the Gaza Strip during this war. You claim you've killed 13,000 Hamas fighters, yet you haven't produced any lists whatsoever.
Hamas's lists have the same old problem in that they do not distinguish between civilians versus combatants killed, or deaths as a result of Israeli actions versus Palestinian militant actions, or by failed rocket launches falling back into Gaza. The Israel Defense Force estimates that about 2,000 such failed rocket launches have occurred since the start of the war. Take a look at this graph of the increase in the number of deaths reported over time. Naturally occurring numbers don't look like this. It is so regular, it's almost as if the same number of deaths are occurring at regular intervals. Here is another reason to be skeptical of the numbers coming from Hamas. As early as November 2023, the Gaza Ministry of Health stopped directly reporting on the number of fatalities due to the near collapse of the health infrastructure, with many of the hospitals destroyed. And so, the Gaza Government Media Office has now taken over that role, although their methodology is unknown. Between the 7th of October and the 19th of December, 19,667 fatalities were reported by the Gaza Ministry of Health, which has not published updated totals since then, the Government Media Office reported. This news also appeared in a Wall Street Journal opinion piece. All this has become such an embarrassment for Hamas that even they have admitted their numbers are inaccurate.
Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministry admits to flaws in casualty data.
Latest developments. The Hamas-run Gaza Ministry of Health said on April 6 that it had incomplete data for 11,371 of the 33,091 Palestinian fatalities it claims to have documented. In a statistical report, the ministry notes that it considers an individual record to be incomplete if it is missing any of the following key data points: identity number, full name, date of birth, or date of death. The health ministry also released a report on April 3 that acknowledged the presence of incomplete data but did not define what it meant by incomplete. In that earlier report, the ministry acknowledged the incompleteness of 12,263 records. It is unclear why, after just 3 more days, the number fell to 11,371, a decrease of more than 900 records. Prior to its admissions of incomplete data, the health ministry asserted that the information in more than 15,000 fatality records had stemmed from reliable media sources. However, the ministry never identified the sources in question, and Gaza has no independent media.
You deny the accusation that you greenlit genocide?
I absolutely deny.
Okay. Is Israel committing genocide in Gaza?
Senator Cotton, we don't have any evidence of genocide being created.
So that's a no. Israel's not committing genocide in Gaza.
We don't have evidence of that.
No notion that the Palestinians are telling the truth about how many people are killed.
But would it be fair to say that the key point that you made your initial order and ruling upon was whether or not there was a plausible case that should be taken on by the court of genocide in the case of Israel's actions in Gaza after October 7, and you quite clearly decided that there was a plausible case. Is it right to say that's at the heart of what you decided?
You know, I'm glad I have a chance to address that, because the court's test for deciding whether to impose measures uses the idea of plausibility, but the test is the plausibility of the rights that are asserted by the applicant, in this case, South Africa. So the court decided that the Palestinians had a plausible right to be protected from genocide, and that South Africa had the right to present that claim in the court. It then looked at the facts as well, but it did not decide, and this is something where I'm correcting what's often said in the media, it didn't decide that the claim of genocide was plausible. It did emphasize in the order that there was a risk of irreparable harm to the Palestinian right to be protected from genocide. But the shorthand that often appears, which is that there's a plausible case of genocide, isn't what the court decided.
So we shouldn't believe Hamas, we shouldn't believe the UN, the World Health Organizations, all the aid groups on the ground, rights groups from all over the world. We shouldn't believe them, we should believe the Israeli government.
Hamas is a terrorist organization that has a record of manipulating civilian casualty figures to truncate Israel's war efforts and to stir up world outrage. In other words, lies. Lies promulgated by the Council on American Islamic Relations.